Hello everyone, I'm Darren Santermani and I'm currently the pre-K through 5 principal at Fairfield Elementary School here in the Fairfield USD 310 School District in Langdon, Kansas. We are a small 8-man school, pre-K through 12 building, and we also house a daycare on our campus. Overall, we have about 300 students pre-K through 12. My wife, Emily, and I live in Kingman. She is a night shift nurse at Kingman Community Hospital. My oldest, Finley, my daughter here, she is 7 years old and currently in 2nd grade. Our middle, Jace, is 4 years old and in preschool. And then the baby there is Miles. He just turned 5 months in January here. So that is my wife and my kids. In 2011, I began my teaching career in Cheney, Kansas, in the Cheney School District at the elementary school where I taught 5th grade, and for 1 year coached middle school football. Following 1 year, I moved to the high school level of coaching football and also middle school basketball for 7 years until I took my current position here at Fairfield in 2018. My goals for education are for me to continue to be a positive male role model for my students and to do whatever I can to help them succeed in everyday life. I want to work hard to continue towards the Kansas State Board of Education goals and the Kansas CAN vision for education. Moving on to looking at the 3 levels of government control of public schools. Starting with the federal government, through the research that I found, the role of the federal government in education is relatively limited, to where only about 8% of federal aid goes to education, and much of that comes from different departments like the Education Department, Department of Health and Human Services, and the U.S. Department of Agriculture for some of the meals and food type programs that we have for our students. Different laws and regulations come from the federal government, everything from the Every Student Succeeds Act, No Child Left Behind, Common Core Standards, FERPA, IDEA, all the really big things, laws and regulations that kind of incorporate a person as a whole and their civil and constitutional rights. Also with that is the 10th and 14th Amendments, mainly dealing with civil rights and those type of things. We also get big title programs, Title I funding, Title IX, ESOL programs, IDEA, and as I said earlier, Every Student Succeeds Act. And also one of the biggest things that the federal government does is to continue to research and development of new educational things to inform state and local governments is one of the major roles in how the federal government supports public education. Moving on to state governments, one of their main purposes, whether it be the Board of Education or the Commissioner or whatever it is of the boroughs, depending on what state you're in, is to control the state budget of education. They also, with the legislature, control the base aid per pupil, and then they provide just under about half of the total revenue for schools to operate. The state legislatures also set up state statutes for education, and they delegate authority to local governments, which I think in today's day and age it's been almost a little bit of a reversal, and that we've seen some of that with the pandemic of who has the most control of public education. And then also the legislature and the Department of Education working with the federal government to establish standards and accountability measures. They're in the research articles, they talked about how the federal government sets Common Core standards, and then the states chose to add in standards for math, reading, science, pretty much everything. So that comes down to the district level and how they support also. Moving on to support from the local government. This is almost half the district's operating fund are funded by local taxes, depending on how the school district is, suburban, urban, or rural. That a lot of it comes from city and county, depending on where your school district is and how the student body is made up. Also with that, the local government, you have district policies by the Board of Education. Most of those are posted on the school district's website, so they are accessible, easy. Everything from just everyday operations of the Board of Education. And then a lot of times, as I put in here, working with the county and city governments to make sure that the public education is funded. I had a lot of direct ties with this last year with the Sparks money, of working with the county treasurer and making sure that we were classifying things as important, of how we were going to get some of that federal money through the county to our local government. Now moving to various levels and who is in charge and what entities are involved. In the federal government, we have Dr. Miguel Cardona, is the current Secretary of Education for the United States. His main job is to assist the president in their vision and goals of what they want for education, and then working with Congress to implement laws that are passed by the House of Representatives and Senate. And this person is nominated and confirmed by the Senate for a paid cabinet level position. Through some of this, he also helps set some of the things with the other departments that provide funds to education also. At the state government, we have the Kansas Governor, Laura Kelly, Kansas State Board of Education, and Kansas State Department of Education. The Board of Education members are elected. There are currently 10 districts in the state of Kansas, separated by a population of how many people are in those counties at the district that they're representing. And then Board of Education members appoint the Commissioner of Education, which currently is Dr. Randy Watson, and serves as the Executive Chair of Kansas State Department of Education. And these three entities work together to set the vision and goals for Kansas education. They also work with the legislature for funding and for many other things dealing with education in Kansas. Here in my local government, we have county and city elected officials. With our county, within Reno County, a pretty much large county here, we have commissioners. And then going into the city elected officials, Fairfield is kind of in the middle of 6 small communities. Each one does have elected city council members. So our district does work with the different city councils in each of our little towns to do certain things together through local government. And then our district does have Board of Education members, and then they work with our superintendent, Betsy McKinney. The Board of Education members are elected at large here. They're not separated by certain communities. They volunteer their time to serve our community, and of course they're not paid, but our superintendent is paid. And then of course these people working well with Kansas State Board of Education members, other elected officials through the Kansas State House of Representatives and the Kansas State Senate, and then even further up into Dr. Watson and the governor if needed, that ever happens. So looking at the different course learning outcomes, 6.1, I believe that the local government has the most influence on this course learning outcome. The Board of Education and Superintendent of the district working with the community members and the other elected officials in our small towns to make sure that we have communication, technology, school level governance, and operating systems to support each student. Course learning outcome 6.2, to evaluate, develop, and advocate for a data-informed and equitable resourcing plan that supports school improvement and student development. I think overall probably has the biggest is the state government backing up the local government of what we do here in our district and in our community. Kansas State Board of Education, and then also the Commissioner of Education, those seeing what the district is doing and supporting us and doing what they can to make sure that each kid has a high quality education that is inclusive and making everybody feel welcome. And then learning outcome 6.3, evaluate, communicate about, and implement laws, rights, policies, and regulations to promote student and adult success and well-being. I think overall this is the federal government's role, but very much so it is through the state of Kansas with laws and regulations that our legislature passes, and also with the Kansas state statutes. But overall, those are in guidelines with the federal government of what the U.S. Department of Education and what Congress passes to ensure that all students and adults' rights are protected and that they are successful and everybody has a well-being when they're here in school. So looking at how this all works together for the educational success. Student and adult civil rights are protected with the employment laws, with all the title programs, ESOL, IDEA. I think with the federal government making sure that all of those things work to ensure that everybody's rights and privileges are not taken away from them. That it does all come together with the programs and services and the proper funding, for a high quality and free education. All these governments working together, of having the federal government having these programs, the states looking at them and making sure they're ensuring that those programs are being met, and the local government and school district working with those programs also to make sure that everything is being fulfilled so you can receive the state and the federal aid by having those programs and being very faithful to them. So looking at the course learning outcomes and correlation, this assignment correlated with the course learning outcomes because the expectations outlined for us in the assignment and the research articles directly relate to how our government here at the district level and in the community works with the state, and how the state works with the federal aid of the operations and management of education. It gave great detail of the expectations of each level of government and the roles that they play in education. Relevant, I think any more than what we have today in the pandemic, this will always be relevant, of understanding what the roles of each level are and who should have the most influence on education. This assignment was relevant because of just what's going on. So, and this is right in the middle of when I've been helping our superintendent work on ESSER funds, ESSER reports, capital outlay projects, and looking overall for the budget next year of what we're going to do, and just understanding where the money's coming from, what other supports, what programs we have. It just came at a perfect time. In there of what level has the most influence, it should be ideally what you'd think as the local, but we're seeing more and more right now it's the state, and even some towards the federal, even though in the research it shows that it clearly has a very limited role. It has a very large role right now, as it seems. So, and then reflection, I think having a deeper understanding of how the three levels of government work together and separately will help me throughout the district level endorsement. I'll be able to refer back to these articles that I found very interesting of how they all tie together. And then, looking as a future as a district leader, just understanding how much aid that our district will get from the federal, from the state, and from our local taxes. Also, what programs are initiated by what level. Just having a better understanding and working with other administrators and board members and things like that of how this all comes together. And I think this assignment has given me a much broader view than just sitting in our board meetings and trying to figure out. So I really enjoyed this assignment and kind of thinking of how this may have been different pre-pandemic, of how we would view what federal or what level of government has the most influence on education right now. And it is very much right now seeming like the state does instead of local. Reference pages, and then credits to everything that I used for this presentation. Thank you all for watching. I look forward to your feedback.